Hello and welcome back to the Sunday special episode of the You Up podcast. I'm Jordana Abraham.
And I am Jared Freed. It is so good to be back here with you, Jordana, but it is especially good to be here with a very special guest. He is the author of Love Life. It is a book about dating, relationships, how to raise your standards, find your person, and live happily no matter what. That is what this show... People seek out this show for. So if you're a listener to the show, it's the perfect guest. It's the perfect book. It's called Love Life. Matthew Hussey, thank you for coming on the You Up podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure.
I like your accent.
My accent.
You have an accent.
I mean, your accent. I mean, I got everyone's a little moist in here, I think.
Where did you grow up?
I'm from outside of Boston.
Yeah, it's a great accent.
It's a good. I don't have.
For me, it's a movie accent.
Really, yours is a movie accent. You're like Hugh.
I'm garbage.
You're like Hugh Grant in Notting Hill.
Yeah,
even just the way you said "I'm garbage" was a movie. To
really?
Me.
That
was it. The Town. The Departed.
I don't even have a Boston accent. I never had it.
Do the Boston.
The Departed.
Yeah,
you talking shit? You know, like I don't know. I never had the accent, but I know if. Listen,
do you think
you're
that
from
we
a
have
far-off
different
land.
Do you think we have different accents?
Yes.
Yes.
You don't really have a Long Island
Yours
accent.
feels much
That's a
more
compliment.
neutral to me.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Non-accent. I like it.
There's nothing people from Long Island hate more than Long Island.
Than hearing that they sound like they're from Long Island. Right. Yeah.
People when I'm here, people think I'm posh.
Yeah.
And I feel like my accent adapts slightly, but my family are all from the East End of London, which is like
is that like
the Cockney?
The rough part?
Literally every time there is
chimney sweep. Is that what
chimney sweep, Mary Poppins. Anytime there's any kind of a villain in a movie, they always give them a Cockney accent. I've noticed that. Yeah.
Okay.
They always come
Cockney
in like sort of squirrely character, like trench coat, trying to sell you like a
artful dodger.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't tell the difference, but I mean, I do know when there's like the Queen's English.
Yeah,
that's the posh part, right?
I can sort of morph into that. Sometimes I feel like I do morph into that. The more I start, if I'm using big words, I'll start like that's my accent.
Taking
and then
it on.
As soon as I'm back home, it goes proper.
Back
Mary
home,
Poppins.
you go towards where people from your home talk. I think because I have that in Boston, where I'll get more Boston-ish if I go home towards that area.
So
but then
I'm getting Boston light right now.
this is like for me, I'm Boston. I've been in New York for 15 years now, so I feel like I'm just like this Northeast blob.
Right. Plus, you also go across the country doing your shows, so maybe you become more adapted. But this is all to say, we're very excited to have you. You seem very fancy. Your accent makes you seem, I mean, obviously you know what you're doing. You are like an acclaimed speaker, coach, best-selling author. So you already know what you're doing, but the accent definitely helps. But can you kind of take us back to like how you got into this? Like
How did it take you so long to come on this show? That's really the question.
You can't ask all the guests that.
Never
it's not
been
nice.
invited.
Right.
Not once.
We have a sign outside the door that says, Matthew Hussey, please, we're waiting. You're invited anytime.
That sign, I feel like went up 5 minutes before I got here. There was no invite. I've wanted to come on your show.
Really?
Yeah.
This is the thing.
We
This
would
is
have
like
always
two
been happy to have
star-crossed
you.
lovers.
Yeah, I'm so glad we connected.
I always feel like whenever like someone on my team messages people, they never get a response. And then if I message directly, someone goes, yeah, of course. And I'm
Right.
Oh my
That's how it
God.
goes.
It's almost
well,
like
I'm happy
publicists
to
don't
be
do
here.
anything.
Right. Well, so how long have you been in the game?
Oh man, it's 17, how long? 17 years of my life by now. Yeah,
Okay.
I started making YouTube videos when I was 19, which was like early YouTube.
You're 19 going, women, be yourself, have some confidence. Like, how does it start?
I was a shy and introverted kid. So like everything I was learning was useful for me first.
Okay.
It was like how to create more opportunity and how to be a little braver, how to get out of my shell. Like I was the weird kid at 13 or 12 who was reading How to Win Friends and Influence People because it was on my dad's bookshelf, and I was like, firstly I was reading it because I thought, oh, that's a silly title for a book.
Right.
I was almost, there's something funny about it, and then I opened it up and I was like, this is exactly what I need.
Well, it's funny you say that because I've
read that book too. It's a good one.
Well, I'm sure you get this a lot. We have a dating podcast. We talk about dating, relationships, the modern dating stuff. The first response from someone who doesn't know why or how this show came about. What do you know? So do you think that's what makes you a great relationship coach, is that you were like, I had it in me. I know how it feels. I know how someone feels who's going through this.
I think at that age, it made me good at understanding people's fear of making a move. That I could relate to. And I felt like I'd done just enough for myself that I knew how to get people out of themselves in that way. But it took me a lot longer to, I think, develop real wisdom about, on a deeper level, why I had this theory that, early on, if I could just help people take more risks and create more choice, they'd make better choices because they'd have more of them and they wouldn't settle for someone who treated them badly. And it took me a few years to realize, even with lots of choices, people will still make bad ones.
Right.
They'll still
look at that. Isn't that the story of dating apps?
Yes. In a big way. Yes. Like that's they've come along, and in a way, dating apps sell themselves on being the answer to the problem, which is we're just not meeting each other.
Right,
we're all great. We're just not meeting each other. And it's solved the problem of not needing to leave your house to meet someone, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Like I think that's
For some. Well,
I would have liked it.
what if someone can leave the house and they still use one?
I think,
Don't you think that's created them staying home as opposed to going out where they're the most themselves and best version of themselves?
yes, I've been saying that for years. And
I read it. I just copied what you said.
At a certain point, I felt like I almost had to pull back on that a little bit, because I was like, you know what? I need to accept reality, which is that people will take the path of least resistance.
Right.
If they can sit at home in their pajamas and message people without having to go out, they're going to. So I had to kind of go, and I had to admit that so many people I was hearing about that were married had met on an app. So I was like, okay, look, this can't be blanket apps are bad, but it's like anything else. They're addictive.
Well, I guess it's hard. That's got to be the hardest part for you, is apps are good, apps are bad. They're both. How
100%.
do you say that to someone in a book and get them to, want my coaching when I say apps are good? We do that here a lot, where we're like,
where it's like, it
what's
seems
the
like
situation?
It seems like people want like the rules, right? They're like, what? Just tell me how to act, and then how do I beat the game, when it's so not like that.
Well, I think Instagram is something where you can accumulate followers faster if you do things that, get you immediate attention.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily get you the kind of followers you want. It doesn't necessarily build the kind of brand that you want to build.
Someone said this the other day. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the difference between an audience and a following.
Right.
Like, you've gained an audience, people watching you, but is it or is it people that really are on the same page as you?
That's really good.
I heard that the last week, and I was like, okay, I'm stealing that, just like I stole your line.
Well, I'm here now. We can clear all this up. There's so many people who worry more about the attention that they're getting than the quality of the attention. And I think actually one of the hardest things to do in our love lives, but I think is what we have to do if we really want to find what we want, is we have to let go of some of the attention that we've come to rely on for our validation and our significance, in order to attract something that's more nuanced and more rare. Like
what's an actionable?
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you give an example of something a practical example of how you would do that?
If we're used to, putting lots and lots of very sexy content on an app.
I don't need you to compliment me like this. Okay, I know, I get it. It's good pictures. Okay.
I mean, once in a while, you reading a book would be nice, as opposed to the mankini
not
shots.
gonna find that picture.
Yeah, definitely not a big reader.
Not a big
Enough
reader.
of the thirst trap.
Love Life by Matthew Hussey. You can pick it up anywhere books are sold. I'm just gonna do the audio version.
Yeah, you'll do the audio version. Sorry.
I really like it. Yeah. Just to sort of just jump in randomly.
To Plug City, we love.
I love it.
Let me see the book.
For it.
I will listen. Matthew Hussey.
You're watching on YouTube.
If you're watching on YouTube, it's right here. It's a beautiful book.
Great cover.
We love it. Love Life. You can buy it anywhere. We'll put the link in the bio of the episode.
Lovelifebook.com.
Lovelife book. Okay, sorry.
And how many books have you written?
This is my second one.
Your second
my
book.
first one was over 10 years ago now.
Has anything changed since your views about dating and relationships since your first book?
I think well, firstly, I think we are in this very dopaminergenic time. I'm the last person to say it, but it's true. And that applies to dating as well. Like it's people, I think we go through our dating lives, if we're not careful, like constantly seeking those hits instead of being able to, if everything is jacking up your nervous system all the time and you're constantly looking for that, like that feeling of matching with someone, that text from another person, you're never really allowing your nervous system to just be calm and to go and to almost have enough time to process anything you're doing. And I think a lot of guys suffer from this, is like they're hopping around so much from person to person that they never really get the chance to just appreciate anything and to connect with how great someone is in front of them. You never get to that point of even knowing how great they are because you're constantly interrupting getting to know this person with the next person or the next message. And so I think a huge part of, again, look, is knowing what we want. No judgment on people who just want to go and have fun. But if you know you want a relationship, I think we have to, that's like a go slow to go fast thing that we have to get used to doing.
And why do you think that's so hard for men in particular? Because like, I mean, I agree. I think that that's what a lot of people see, especially in big cities where there's a ton of options like New York or LA. Where you kind of feel like to the men, there's always like someone else just around the corner. And that's why it seems like no one is committing, or there's this feeling of like being disposable, especially in these big cities, but I'm not saying that men don't feel that. I don't think you feel that, but
no, I'm with you on this.
But you can feel like the people that you're dating, like if I don't need to pick someone that isn't perfect because there's a million people around me that the next one could be perfect.
Yeah. That's a big problem. Like it's applying this kind of optimization mindset to people, and you can't fully optimize for people in that way. Like if there's something flawed about this person in front of you and you go, why you don't get to just tweak that flaw in the next person. You're going to get a whole new basket of ingredients.
Right.
And they're going to have different flaws that this person didn't have. So there's a certain point where, you know, I feel like there's a term, I wish I was more researched on this, but it's called like the optimal stopping point.
This is like Logan Ury has the thing about the
like satisficers and the maximizers.
Well, it's like if you could only interview 100
secretary problem,
you would, what number would you stop at?
Or I think it was like if you interview 100, if you're looking for a secretary and you interview 100 secretaries, like you probably would have found someone who was ideal by like the 30th person that you were looking at.
Well, and I think it's even more nuanced, which is that you will find someone with the raw materials to create something ideal, but it doesn't always start exactly ideal. You know, I think the word settling has this very negative connotation, but it depends on what language you put around it. If you say settle for, that's a negative use of that word, right? We think we're being shortchanged when we settle for something. But if you change it to settle on, it's a very different connotation. There's something very empowered by that, about that. And it implies, I'm going to make this amazing. It's like people going from east to west in America. At some point they had to say, we're going to settle on this particular piece of land.
You have to make it
amazing. I think about that every time I travel. I'm like, man, I would have been, that's why I'm from Boston. Because my family was like, we're done walking. We're done walking.
Just pick somewhere, right?
It's over. Like, I can't believe the people that kept going past Utah. I'd be like, it's enough already.
I mean, that's the whole thing. Like you talk about choices. Like life is all about your choices, right? People are so terrified of picking the wrong one that they don't pick anything.
And it is scary. Like the idea of picking this roommate for life.
Right.
So
that is scary.
You're here with your lovely wife.
Yeah.
And how long have you guys been married?
Since last October, so coming up, to August. We got married with all our family and friends in October. That is not. Okay.
I guess Trouble in Paradise already fighting 1 year in. Call TMZ.
All of our friends and family we were together in October when we got married, but we got married like the registration was in just the two of us.
The license?
The license.
That's what you're on the license date?
She wants an anniversary sooner.
Oh, okay.
I get it. More anniversary presents.
How'd you meet?
At a friend's engagement party.
Friend's engagement party. Great way to meet someone.
Great way to meet. Old fashioned. It was like, I wasn't on the apps. So it didn't, my ability to go on the apps was quickly taken from me by the fact that I was increasingly becoming known as this person.
Right. Well,
This is
the same kind of. You guys are like birds of a feather here.
Well, I
you
guess
have the same thing.
I'm asking these questions for myself more than anything because you're in this world of dating and advice and coaching, and you're helping people through their relationships. You know, and you meet Audrey, right? And Audrey, and you meet at a engagement party. What's your first? Have you heard of him when you made the engagement party?
Did you know who he was?
No, I hadn't heard of him. He literally told me his job, and I was like, "What?"
What did you say his job was?
All right.
I can't remember what you said.
Love guru.
No, you didn't say.
Well, were you
Mary Poppins of love.
were you nervous in getting into starting to date someone who talked about their own probably dating experiences or dating in general, like for a living? Is that scary?
No, it didn't really come up because you asked me not. I remember you said to me, "Don't Google me. And don't look up my videos." Like, don't know.
Nothing more
ominous.
terrifying. You meet a man, please don't Google me.
Right.
It does sound ominous when you say it like that.
You can buy Love Life anywhere books are sold.
How many felonies did
We
you
have to stop
imagine?
asking Audrey questions for the first time
Audrey,
on
switch
the air.
seats with Matthew. I think we have found the interview we were looking for. Listen, what's the first?
So he says, don't Google me. So what are you
No,
thinking?
as in because he wanted, rightly so, for me to sort of meet, like, discover who he was and get to know him without any context for what he did.
You asked her on a date?
Yeah, I did, didn't I? We went to an Italian restaurant. She didn't eat anything. She couldn't
I was
eat.
too nervous.
Yeah.
Too nervous.
I get that. I would never eat on first dates.
You ordered.
Yeah, what are you doing on a dinner date? The first date? Is that your move?
In fairness, we talked for many hours that night we met.
Okay, so it was
I feel
like a
like we
second
did
date.
That
like
was the
3
first
dates.
date. Yeah.
That's fair.
We had we did the equivalent of like 3 dates worth of talking
Yeah,
when we
for
first met.
Was there ever a thought where you were like, oh, maybe he's doing one of his coaching moves on me? Like, this is the work of a professional.
Not everyone's as cynical as us.
I'm just. That's why I like having guests on the show. Sometimes people get mad at us for like being the cynical Sarahs over here, but like
I'm just trying to get to the meat.
I want to hear what makes Matthew Hussey go, fuck you. Like
You're definitely getting things that no one else has gotten, so you're good at what you do.
This is what we do.
We try to make everyone as uncomfortable as possible. I imagine you've dated other people before this.
I have.
Are you talking about them, on your social media or anything? Like how do you decide when to bring?
I was very, very private with that part of my life because I just didn't want it. It just didn't feel fair to anyone.
So you never really talked about it?
No.
Okay.
I kind of made it a thing that I would talk about things once it was like, my person and I knew.
Right.
So it felt very easy with Audrey to be like, oh, we're talking about this. But before that, I was just very careful in my life. Yeah.
Got it.
Here's the thing. The most of your audience, I would imagine, is like our audience, female.
Mm-hmm.
You're hearing the cries of 1,000 women. You're hearing all their issues that go into dating. And this is an issue I have where I know every email we read. All these questions we've heard 1,000 times. You've probably heard every question 7,000 ways to ask the same question. You're dating Audrey. You're moving along. When you're acting a certain way. And
how she's interpreting it.
Right. You kind of know the answers to what you're doing. You know the right thing to do. You can't play dumb to anything. Did you text in time? Did you do?
Don't you think things when it's happening in real time and you're in it and like you've got the front seat? I always think I don't know.
I think that's true when you're sure. You two are married right now. So the people that you dated before, Audrey, we don't mention names. I'm not asking for personal stories, but did you have moments where you're going along with someone that you're like, this isn't it, and I know it, and now I'm walking on borrowed time, that maybe another guy who doesn't talk about dating or relationships would know that?
Who doesn't have the ignorance, who can claim ignorance.
Right.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. I think that was something... Yeah, I looked back on that with regret. I felt like I could have, there were times in my life where I was like, oh, I stayed there too long, or, I hurt someone unnecessarily. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I mean, but could you know, like, I know even text to text.
Like, what do you know?
Okay, this text is saying this about me. This text is giving this impression of us.
Oh, I see. You know the impact you're having as you're having it.
Right. Even if I want to have that impact, when I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying
the
to
message
see,
you're sending.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the, and we were talking about like the time spent in dating and figuring out when you talk about disposability, I do think, and this is me giving empathy to the monsters out there, that after any relationship, if you're a guy who ends it, you're told, when did you know?
I would ask that.
Right. And I think a lot of those guys that push off earlier, then maybe they go, I'm just not feeling it. We have a lot of women that write into us. Things were great. I had no idea. Then he just jumped ship. Well, if I go another week to try and sit in this and see if this is the right one, I'm going to be blamed for that week.
It's a really, I literally had a thought like this a few hours ago where I was like,
now you're stealing my lines.
I was thinking, people get very, very hurt by someone who changes their mind. There was a story, there was a story that we were going to do on a TV show that I was on today. And the news piece was about a viral video on TikTok about a woman who went on a weekend she went to visit him, I think, for the weekend. They had been hitting it off. She then went there. The whole time they were both saying, we're not in the market for anything. We'll just see what happens. Right. It's not intentional, just whatever. So it was a very chill vibe. And then she went there for the weekend. It went well, but still it was but we're just seeing where it goes. And then she left. And so the story goes, I don't know the details, but her grandma died. Mm-hmm. And then he basically spent 45 minutes on the phone with her talking about, her grandma. And at the end of it says, so I think I want to call it, I think I don't want to go any further.
And is this someone sharing the story on TikTok?
She's sharing the story on
angry,
TikTok. She's very, yes.
Okay.
I
assume this isn't is she even killed?
Perturbed.
Right, yes.
And
it was the ghost of the grandma doing the video.
So
piece of shit.
I just want to watch Audrey's face throughout this podcast. It's going to be my best entertainment. I remember when I watched this, I thought he's done a lot better than if he had spent another 6 months in this out of guilt, or even 3 months in this out of guilt. And it kind of, the whole way through, they were very honest that they weren't like, what is it? I don't know. We don't know what it is. We'll just see, whatever. There's that kind of tone to it. And I couldn't help but watch this video and think, he's kind of been himself this whole time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's been exactly who he is this whole time. He was non-committal before you went. He was non-committal when you got there. And now he doesn't want to sit through grieving with you, with a person in your life, because he doesn't even know you and you don't know him. So while there's something really abrupt, and I get it that, something major has happened in your life, and that's like to then at the same time be on a phone call with someone where they're like, I can't deal with this. And I don't even think he could have dumped her. They weren't together. Do you know what I mean?
Well, he ended whatever they had going.
Going.
Yes. A rejection. It's a rejection.
Yeah.
He rejected
and
her.
a rejection just we never thank people for rejecting us. Like it's just, I've been in that situation where you're just hurt. You're just mad. You're just like, what the hell? Why wasn't I good enough? But it's the reality is it's better than them doing it a year from now.
No, it is. And I think that's such a great point. I mean, here's the thing. Rejections bruise the ego. They physically, they emotionally, they're very painful. And so I think it's sort of a human nature thing to say, okay, I need to target this feeling of like, I feel like really bad. I feel like bad about myself. I feel like unworthy. Then you need to like find some place to put it. And usually it's sort of, you try to make the person into like a little bit of a villain because it makes you feel like if you were wronged, then it doesn't have to hurt so much, even though it still hurts kind of the same amount.
And now you can go on TikTok and find enough people to agree with how much of a villain that guy is that you're going to be a news story.
That too.
I mean,
like, well, that's the extra modern day version of it. Everyone gets to be their own mini Taylor Swift.
Right. But if that person came to you, okay, as a coach and said, because the name of the book, How to Raise Your Standard, which is something we talk about. The word standard comes up here all the time. Standard, to me, fluctuates. Your standard changes with age, with time, whatever, and I'm sure you would agree with that. Someone comes to you and goes, he dumped me right when I told him Gam died. Mm-hmm. What should I do with my standard? Like, how do you talk to that person? How do you say to that person, what's the actionable step like for them?
I mean, I think we have to be honest. Like in that situation, I'd have to be really honest and look, I'm always going to start with compassion and say what you're hurting. Like firstly, there's been this horrible thing in your life, you're grieving. And then on top of that, you now feel this rejection at the worst possible time.
Her being upset is not what we're
but once you
giving feedback.
Once you step back from that, I would kind of point out that the reality is this person at this stage doesn't necessarily owe you anything. You don't really know this person. You've seen them once. Like this wasn't, it's not like you were seeing this person for 3 months, you know, hooking up, spending time together. And then right at this moment in your life, they just went, I'm out.
Well, what like the person that was 3 months? What's the difference in that scenario? What is, with the person that dated for 3 months?
And you talked about this before, sort of like people get very upset when you change your mind.
Yeah, and I think maybe the difference with the 3 months is if someone's been telling you that they're really interested and that they want to be more with you, that's a different thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you've been hooking up for 3 months with absolutely no mention of like this being anything, and you keep telling each other, it's just a bit of fun, we'll just see what happens. Like, you're kind of creating that culture in the relationship where if someone changes your mind, it changes their mind. It's almost in keeping with the culture of the situation because it's been non-committal the whole time. And I think it's really important we get honest with ourselves about what we actually want, because I see a lot of people who are saying, yeah, I'm just chill. Let's just see what happens. And they're not chill.
Right.
They don't want to just see what happens. They are in the market for a relationship. They're just not being honest with another person or themselves about that.
Right.
And so then if we truly don't care where it goes and we're just having fun, how can we get so hurt 2 weeks from now? Why does that affect us so badly? I think it's because we're betraying our intentions by pretending we're more indifferent than we really are, when deep down there is a genuine longing to find love, to be in a relationship. And what I try to encourage people to do is to have those difficult conversations with themselves where they actually get honest about what it is they want. Because if you haven't been honest with yourself, then you do go in constantly being like, I'm just seeing what happens. Right. And then we get hurt every time when someone wants something casual, which is what we put ourselves out for in the first place.
You and Audrey meet, you go for dinner, and now the next time, what's the next date?
Oh God! Well, I went.
Like, is it let's be chill? Like, what's the discussion? How do you go through those things? Like,
are you looking for a relationship at that point?
It wasn't. I was not the hero of this story at that time.
That's what we want. Evil Matthew Hussey. That's right. I want big dog Hussey. Big dog in the house. Gotta eat.
Can we just clip that? Put it on our Instagram.
Yeah. Dudes.
We want the dirt.
Yeah, I want to. So why are you the hero?
I went back to LA. We dated for like a month, and then I went back to LA, and I was just, the idea for me at the time of a long distance relationship between LA and London was.
You were living in London. Got it. Okay.
So I was like,
That's a lot of time zones. I'm Team Hussey on this one. Team Big Dog.
We don't even know what he did.
Oh, okay.
Team Big Dog.
Let's find out.
Oh my God. I think my last long distance relationship before that, I was like 21, and I just remember it being so exhausting.
So you called Audrey, you're like, there's just too many women here. Oh no. Okay. Sorry.
I started to kind of fade in a very stereotypical fashion. I started to message less. We weren't together, we were just dating, but it was
Pulled
quite
back.
clear that I was pulling back.
So you're pulling, but again, to go back, like you're knowing you're doing that.
God, I don't remember. I think it wasn't that I think it was just very clear I was not, I don't even think I was being that intentional about it. I think it was just, I'm here, you're there.
Right.
The motivation to call, to text wasn't there in the same way, because I wasn't in the headspace of let's make this work.
Okay.
It just wasn't where I was at.
And it's funny because if someone else was in this situation, they could easily go time zones. That's why.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what he's saying.
But it is what you're saying. But you're taking ownership of like, I'm not trying.
Yeah. No, I definitely. I think I have to, because I clearly wasn't trying. And Audrey is definitely the hero of this story, because at a certain point we kind of just lost contact, and then I think it must have been like 2-3 weeks without really saying anything. And then I did the kind of typical cringeworthy male thing of sending a message saying, I miss you.
Oh.
So like the name of this podcast, a you up text of sorts.
Yes, with no end.
Right. You're not
to no end.
Yeah. Right. There's nothing to gain.
Okay.
Oh, well, there's something to gain. There's emotional, the dopamine that you talked about before.
Which is exactly what Audrey picked up on. And she sent me a message
She wrote back, fuck you, big dog, Hussey.
Had you ended it, or it just kind of like fizzled before that? It fizzled.
You ain't gonna big dog Audrey.
There was no like, there was no like declaration of like, I don't know if I want to do a long distance thing. It just kind of fizzled. And then 2 weeks later you message her.
Then I messaged, and she was like, she sent me a message back that was so brilliant. She said, hey, I hope you're well. I don't really know what to say when you send this. To be honest, we haven't really been that close for a while now. And rightly or wrongly, this message comes off as a bid for attention.
Wow. I love that.
You wrote that?
We need to get you in front of the camera.
You gotta get you a book deal.
No, seriously.
Poetry
I
right
mean,
there.
that's like
Love Life, co-written by Audrey.
Well,
I'm not joking. We just went on Drew Barrymore this morning, on Drew Barrymore's show, and in the middle of the show, the show was supposed to be over, in fact. Like we had been shooting for like 30 minutes. Drew saw Audrey in the corner behind the camera and pulled Audrey onto the set. And she ended up she was not supposed to be on TV today. It was her first ever time.
Good thing she looks great.
On TV.
Yeah.
Good thing. Yeah, you looked amazing. And you ended up sat on the sofa talking to Drew Barrymore, which was insane. But yeah, she is like, she could do this immediately.
Well, Audrey, can I ask you from your end of it, you go on this great date with this guy. He goes back to LA. He's kind of letting it fizzle. What are you thinking as he's like letting it fizzle? Are you like worked up about it? Do you care?
I can tell you right now, this answer is going to be very hurtful.
Is
to
it
me.
fizzling to you? Because I think one person's fizzles, another person's ghosting.
That sometimes can be true.
But is it a dual fizzle?
I think definitely, I felt like the attention was just kind of going away slowly. And I think I was just in a phase of my life where I kind of could see the writing on the wall, and I didn't really want to go chase after someone who wasn't going to give me what I wanted. And, long distance relationship is hard anyway. Someone has to be really worth it and really worth the effort and the time that you're going to pour into it. So I think I kind of got put off a little bit by the behavior, which meant that when he messaged me, I actually had done my kind of like getting
grieving
over it. Yeah, a little bit, because I was like, I'm just. But I think that's like that's no reflection of how amazing you are. It's just, I think where I was at, I just felt like I wanted to protect myself more than I wanted to get him.
No, but I think what it meant was what she said was not a tactic. It was a genuine reflection of like where she had arrived at mentally.
Well,
Right.
I think
and
also
so empowering. I mean, like if I could have sent a text like that back in like my single days, like how much time I would have saved myself for like, not letting people kind of like do the casual, like that dance, you know what I mean? It's
absolutely.
it's not prolonging that dance.
Well, also, I think if you could bottle that, what Audrey wrote back to you, you would put it in a bottle and sell it to people who are having dating issues. And it's the hardest medicine to take.
It's really, really
like
hard.
Jordana, you're saying it. Like, I wish I could have done that.
Because it probably feels good to have someone that you were very into say, I miss you. And it could have been, it's easier to just say, yeah, I miss you too. Like, what are you up to? And kind of keep that thing. But to keep it like real like that, I think that's when you're real, that's when you get something real, when you kind of like don't let it live in that vague
That's
world.
100% true. Because the thing is, we think we're being, one version of doing the opposite is someone texts you and you act very giddy and excited that they've reached out. But another version of it is just thinking that you're taking your power back by pretending to be indifferent.
Right.
Like, hey, yeah, I'm good.
Feels
How are you?
empowering.
Whatever. Because you're like, I'm
Yeah.
showing I don't care that much
Neither
and you have
were.
no hold over me.
Right.
But when you do that, someone doesn't know how to read you because you're just
Right.
like, oh, this is fine.
Well, also,
Right.
like, I don't want to take the cape away from superhero Audrey, but like, I think a lot of it is like timing of the I'm sorry to, I'm saying this to like normalize it to like regular everyday, Joe and Jane, like the timing of this, your distance, you've had a long enough time away from each other. That's probably the timing that text should be sent the most. It's early on where it's like,
Right, you're
buy-in-
establishing your standard very early, I
Right.
think, in that scenario.
And I think if it was later on, if you're 2 years in, there could be fear. I'm not saying it would be, but I'm saying it could be fear of like, we've already built this 2 years.
I've invested so much, right, yeah.
I've put, it's hard to undo the
It
shirt
is, but
that's been buttoned.
But I think if you mean it, if you genuinely have that standard, it's actually not really possible for you to get to that 2 year mark.
Right.
You just never would
Right,
get there in
right,
the first
right,
place.
Well, that's what I've always said. I've always said, like, when I was younger, I felt like the friends of mine that were always in relationships were like turned off by the behaviors that maybe I was turned on by or didn't find that offensive.
Or motivated by.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if a guy wasn't texting them like consistently after a date, they were like, I'm not interested in that. And if they texted something like you texted, they might say, I didn't like the way that made me feel. Whereas like, I think a lot of people who have more trouble with dating are kind of like, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to figure out how, like you said, how to play it. I'm going to try to embody the mindset of someone who doesn't care, but actually I care like a lot. So what happens after you text her? What happens after you get that response? Like, how does this culminate in a marriage?
I felt naked, and I felt very called out. And for me, it wasn't like, oh, now that I've got that text, I need to reel her back in somehow. And it wasn't. I just thought, oh, that's fair, and we're not in the same place. Mm-hmm. So fair enough. And I stepped back from it. And then I think it was a few months later, I was coming back to London. And that, by the way, this is what I mean by when I say she's a hero. It was still before I got on the plane, though. It was very early you up text. But what was really amazing is that she didn't get that. I didn't pull back, and then she said, "Oh, well, that didn't work. Let me come forward."
Right.
That was it. That was that.
Well, what did you answer?
I don't remember, but I just know it was like after that, it was like, oh, fair enough. Like it was.
Right. You're right. I don't really miss you that
much.
Well,
that to me, that's the reveal. That's, Audrey looks at Matthew and says, this ain't going to do. I'm a little turned off by this. And then he goes, men, we scurry away like mouse.
Goes back into his hole, right?
Yeah, he goes back and he goes.
That's true. Whenever you call a guy
shit.
out, they immediately just retreat and go hide.
Or wusses. So so Matthew
or if
runs
you're
away.
In the super manipulative end of the spectrum, you call that person and have a 3-hour conversation with them, trying to
convince them,
win them back, and try and
Right.
get to that point again, because now that's the game you like playing.
Right.
So I think that's.
I would scurry away. I'd be like you. I would be like,
I did some.
Okay, so then a few months later, you're going back to London.
Yeah, and I reached out, and at that point she said, she was like, I'm seeing somebody. So
this is a movie.
I love the game here.
This is a
I know
movie.
it's not a game, but like this is
a
the
rom-com.
ideal.
I had that was a really like shitty day for me. I remember that feeling because that was like
You're like, let me see him. I want to know what I'm up against.
So
no, I was like,
Was he British?
she lives in London.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Was he a chimney sweep from the east side?
Not another one.
Okay, so
So
she's
she
seeing
says she's
someone.
seeing
I've
someone.
really got a thing for chimney sweep. Then I was like, oh, okay. And I backed off and that was that. And then
What was your text to her? Like, hey, I'm coming back to town, and
Pretty
she
much.
goes, hey, okay.
do you want to hang out?
Yeah.
Do you want to grab coffee? And
Okay.
she shut it down real fast. And then every time I've told this story, I'm like, because she had a boyfriend and she's like, he wasn't my boyfriend. I'm like, so it wasn't even your boyfriend.
Just casual fucking.
Seeing someone, right? Yeah.
What does that matter?
I was like, this isn't even, she was like, well, it could have gone somewhere. But that's what I mean by every step of the way. She really meant what she said. Like she really practiced what she preached.
Right. And that's attractive, I'm sure, in
It's
itself.
integrity as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
And
she
we-
wasn't
and
like,
I-
I'm seeing this guy, but you know what? I really do like you, so I'm going to start texting you as well. It was just integrity.
Well,
all
this
the
is
way.
this is where men getting no credit for emotional intelligence is a problem for women. Because if you sit there thinking, oh, we don't know anything or don't feel the air of the room, you also think we don't notice when you're not being forthcoming, when you're not being truthful, when you say you're chill, when we know you're not being chill at all. We know that.
Right.
So like
We
it
think
goes both ways.
Right. We don't know that you know that a lot of the time.
Right.
It's
That's
like
a very good point.
Because we're not
There's an energy in the air when someone likes you a lot more than you like them, I think.
But there's also, to your point, there's when someone does an integrity move,
yes.
men see that too.
Right.
it's
It goes both ways. It's
Yeah.
gravity. I totally agree.
And you're like noting that. So if you get your shot again, you're like, this is who I'm dealing with. And that is a very attractive thing.
You know that your chances are limited. It's not like you can do whatever you want and the person's going to play your game.
Right.
100%.
Everything I do is right isn't a turn on. Like, hey, what, I disagree with this and that, but this is turning me on. That's honest. That's
No,
an
it's
honest
true.
conversation. That's a turn on to me. I'm sure you felt that. You go, wow, this is someone who knows what they want.
100%.
Okay, so she's seeing someone. What happens next?
Right. You crashed their wedding.
It wasn't even
object.
her boyfriend, Jared.
Oh, sorry. Right. Just two people casually enjoying intimacy.
So a few months, when I actually, like a couple of months later, I was in London for a decent stint that time. And then I think a couple of months into me being there, I got a text being like, hey, how you doing? And I was like, she's definitely
From her.
single.
Okay.
Yeah. He
'Cause I was like,
fumbled the bag.
there's no way that I
Right,
would be
you would-
getting this text.
Right,
if
because you
she
know
wasn't.
from her past texts.
Right.
Right.
And then we started seeing each other again. And she was like, you have to have an open mind about where this is going. Because if you're not, then
Right.
like I'm not interested. We did the long distance for a while. And then eventually, Audrey moved to LA, which is not easy.
Was there a feeling when you went back, when you started dating again, and I think you talk about this a lot, where you're kind of like, okay, she sort of like laid the groundwork for what she wants here. If I'm going to do this, like I might have to marry her.
No, she actually said something really, really that I thought was really important because it kind of got me out of my own way. She was like, look, you are entitled to change your mind. She said, if 6 months from now you decide I'm not for you, that's okay. You're not the villain in that story. And by the way, I might decide you're not for me, and that's fine too. But I'm not going to do this unless we actually give it a try. So you have to give it a real try. And if you're not going to do that, then let's not bother.
Right.
And so it was to me, I think this is a really important lesson for people out there is that for me, like simultaneously lowered the stakes while raising my level of investment. Because it made me feel like we weren't writing in blood, like this is it now. You can't change your mind if you're.
Or you didn't think she's going to freak out if I
No,
like.
it was like that's
change my
okay,
mind.
that's life. But what I'm not going to do for the next 6 months is have someone who's half in, half out. Like you have to actually go all in and see what this could be. And for me, that took the pressure off. And because it took the pressure off, I actually did go all in. Like I actually, and if I hadn't, she would have nipped that in the bud really quickly. But she felt that. She felt like, oh, he's actually trying now. Oh, we're actually making progress. And the more this is what I mean by settle on. Because then I actually threw myself into it. And by throwing myself into it, I truly got to know her. We had amazing experiences. We really started to figure out each other's character. And it was like, eventually I'm like, oh, I'd be an idiot to throw this away.
It is interesting that it's counterintuitive. The pressure makes you go half in.
It is, yeah.
Because you go, well, I don't want to make anyone mad, so I'll just give enough so that no one gets upset. And then, you take away the pressure, you go, well, I can go all in and see what this is about, because if it's not going to work out, there's no upset to be people will be upset, obviously, but that's
Well, do you think if she didn't text you though, if you texted the "I miss you," and then I responded, "I miss you too," or she was the kind of person who had a different kind of response, do you think you'd be together right now?
God, I think well, no, I'm well. I might have blown it in a way, because she would have gave me enough rope to kind of hang, like that. Who knows how long I would have just stayed in that pattern.
Right, because she's allowing that dynamic.
Yeah.
Of like, you text when you feel a little lonely, and she kind
and do you really even get to know each other?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think we would have truly got to know each other. I think us continuing to I think of it as like microdosing. Like us continuing to microdose on each other actually would have meant we didn't ever really get to know each other.
Right.
And which is an interesting phenomenon in itself. But I was also getting to a point in my life where I was like, this isn't working for me. Like being single, dating around.
It's also timing.
Is not. Yeah, I wasn't. It wouldn't be fair to say I had reached the point where I was like, I know I want to get married. It wasn't that. It just was, this isn't working for me. I don't feel good. I don't feel fulfilled. Like this, I was already searching, I think, for like, where's my happiness? A lot of this book is like figuring out where happiness lies for us. And there's a chapter called Never Satisfied, which describes, I think, how so many people go through their love lives. It's like oscillating between people who are exciting, who are unavailable, who end up hurting them, then going to someone who's safe, who they question whether it's the right person because they don't feel the spark, and then going back to an exciting person who's not available. And it's like this just never being satisfied, never feeling like I found the thing that everyone talks about. And I think for a long time I struggled thinking, maybe there's something wrong with me because I just am not finding peace in this area. I'm constantly questioning myself. I think a lot of people can relate to that. So I
can relate to that.
Yeah. I can too. Yeah. I mean, on the net, and it's called Love Life, is out right now. You can buy it anywhere books are sold. Lovelife.com.
Lovelifebook.com.
Lovelifebook.com. It's in the link is in the bio of this episode. The Never Satisfied thing, were you going on dates and just going, where's my spark? Is that what it was? What
I was looking for that feeling that people talk about when they say, when you know, you know. Mm-hmm. And I was like, but I think something's wrong with me. Mm-hmm. Because I don't, when I would hear friends of mine, especially older friends who would look back on like when they met their wife and they would be like, oh, but then I knew. Like I was like that. I never knew what I wanted. I was always constantly like going from one relationship to the next, always questioning things. And then I met my wife, and when
they always tell that with the wife listening, and I don't believe it.
Right.
Well, I found those stories were a little bit damaging to me because I think it set up this expectation that there's something. I am broken. There is something wrong with me that I'm not able to feel that for some reason. And what is that?
Right. And it could have harmed this because you go, well, if I didn't know then, why would I go back to it now? That could have stopped you from going back.
I think a lot of the times when we say I don't know, we don't even really know the person we're talking about. Right. Like we don't actually know them.
Right.
It takes time to know someone. And I fell in love with Audrey the more I knew Audrey, the more I was like, oh my God, like how have I been sleeping on this? Like, this is crazy. I remember calling up a friend of mine.
All that tail in LA. I'm trying to get him in trouble. And then Audrey's laughing, okay?
Yeah, I said, I just keep panning to Audrey. But I had a friend of mine. I didn't know I wanted to get married either. Like I wasn't someone who was like, I'm destined to get married. I didn't know what I felt about marriage. Like I was a bit contrarian in like, why do I need this thing? Why do I need a piece of paper? Why do I, all of that.
Right.
Those stereotypical arguments. And I remember asking a couple of friends of mine, like, why get married? Like, why?
What's the payoff?
Yeah, like, why is it necessary?
You've had this. It sounds like you've had this thought before. Too.
Yeah. Well,
Where have you come down on it?
I've come down to the idea. I think it's like, this is a bad reason. I think it's like fun to see the next chapter in the book. Like it's fun to see the next episode in the series. Sometimes I feel like as a 39 single guy, I'm living in Groundhog's Day a little bit. I've seen these episodes before. I've seen the Christmas show. I've seen the summer episode. I've seen the trip. I've seen, and you think it's going to be different and it really isn't. It's a little bit more, I would think it's a little like Mario Brothers with the same background going by behind you.
And this is a reason to get married, right? To experience that next level.
Right. I think that's a reason to see what the next shit is about, No,
a friend of mine said to me, we live in a culture where it's so easy to just quit everything all the time. And he was like, I think we do need that silly piece of paper that says, I do give it a thought when we have an argument.
Right.
Your divorced friends in the corner crying.
No, I think that's sort of a great point because and a great point about society because you talk about this all the time. Like no one wants to commit to anything in this generation. But I do think the beauty of marriage is like the idea that you could go through those lows and then like ride them out and come through the highs. Yeah. And like, that's the exciting part.
Yeah. I am not someone who goes around, preaching about marriage. I don't really, I feel like there's a very individual choice. I can only say for me and for Audrey, it did feel different when we got married. Like it felt the same, but it also felt like we're in this, like we're building something. And I do have that feeling now of like, it truly is like the highlight of my life now is that I'm like, oh, we're just building together. Like it's a vision. And it really genuinely excites. It speaks to every part of me to be like, a friend of mine, when I said to the same friend, I said to him, I'm going to propose. He asked me why. And I was like,
it's the worst mistake of your life. Don't do it. I was fucking around.
You took that seriously?
Yeah. The tax benefits aren't that great.
But he said, why? And I said, I want to build, I'm ready to build something in my life. I really feel like I want to build something with someone. And I'm never going to meet a better builder than this. Like this is I've met the most amazing person to do this with. And that for me was the most exciting thing about it. It's still the most exciting thing about it. It's like every day I'm like, we're doing this together. This is so fun.
Your book's promises that you're going to find out how to find your person. That is in the title. On the cover. Everyone should buy it.
Jared is here for his money back guarantee.
That's right.
Can you fix him?
I want to know how to find your person. What is the thing? What is the revelation? What tactics? What tangible ways? Like what in your life, because you've
say fuck off to the I miss you text.
Right. Right. Find someone who'll tell you to go screw yourself. Yeah.
I've been saying to people, this is not a dating book. It is a book about love and finding the kind of love you want. And I think there's a difference because when you get a dating book, you expect it to be filled with like strategies. And this is not that book. This isn't the book that says you have to get out there 3 times more and you have to do sociable things and you have to, it's really trying to explore what is going on with us that we keep getting the same results over and over and over again in our lives.
I'm going to have to look in the mirror? No!
Yeah. Like what's happening?
I'm the problem.
Well, I know, like I've worked with so many people where you can see their patterns playing out. Like I had a woman who was dating a guy, having a great time with him, by all accounts, just a good guy. And then he had a daytime, like, just a barbecue or whatever with his friends, and he didn't invite her. And it was early on in the process, and it really affected her. And for her, she had abandonment wound, and the idea of not being invited to this was a very raw thing for her. And she went cold. And then during the day, she sent him a text and said, "Why didn't you invite me?" And just said it like that. And then when he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I haven't seen these friends in a long time. I was excited to hang out. Can I call you after?" She said, "Don't bother." And when you look at that, you go, okay, there is a pattern there. Now look, for all we know, the stories she was telling herself in her head were real. Like, he doesn't like me as much as I like him. Sure. I'm going to get hurt. The point is we don't know. And unfortunately, what she was doing was precipitating the very thing that...
Self-fulfilling prophecy there.
Yeah, and we all have our version of that. I think of it as, the race car driver analogy. Mario Andretti said his tip for race car driving: don't look at the wall. Your car goes where your eyes go. I think of that all the time because I remember, I write about this in the book, being in a bar in Tokyo with my brothers and having a lot of hypervigilance is something I've had a lot of in my life, and worrying about danger around the corner, and I have my own personal reasons for that. But when I was out with my brothers, I had a very real moment of being like, oh my God, that's my wall. Because we were in this bar, everyone's having a good time, my brother's doing karaoke, it was like a silly moment, whatever. And I just see this other Westerner looking at my brother nonstop, just like staring at him. And in my head, I'm like, this is about to kick off. Like, I can feel it. This guy's going to do something, whatever. And
he came over and you were like, I always knew you two should have been together. I knew you two would work out. No, okay.
So I ended up going over there and not so politely asking the guy if there was an issue. And immediately,
are you a fighter? Is this in your
nature?
No.
It's not. That's the irony of it. It's not. Like, that's not me. But in my head, I'm like, I see this. I have all this stuff going through my head. I'm winding myself up. And then I go over and I say this, and my brother comes over to me and says, "What are you doing?" Like, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "You don't understand. It was all about to kick. Like, this whole thing's playing out. You're not even watching." I'm now angry at him. Like, you're just naively standing there doing your thing. Like, what?
I'm protecting you.
Yeah, you don't get it. Like, and in my head, I was like, how do my brothers survive when I'm not around?
Right.
Like, how do they get through a night? Meanwhile, my brothers are both like 6'2" and 6'4". They do not need me to protect them. They're fine. But what I realized that's even more important than they're fine and they can take care of themselves is that they don't find themselves in situations like that. If I wasn't there, this situation wouldn't find them. And it wouldn't find them because it's not their wall. They're not looking for that wall.
They're not looking for trouble. They're not looking for the guy staring at them. They're just having fun.
And you'll always find that guy, by the way. It's not that that guy doesn't exist. He exists in every bar everywhere in the world. But some people are looking at him and some people are not.
I think that's kind of how you describe how you see a lot of these like anxious avoidant traps, where the anxious person finds the person who's kind of going to give them that avoidant energy, and they both kind of feed off each other because that's what they're looking for. Does that seem like accurate?
Yeah. I think we find the thing that is gonna present as the wall that we keep saying we don't want to run into. But the problem is, if you keep at a certain point, if you stare at the wall for long enough, the wall becomes the world. You just think life is like that.
Well, how do you get out of that? Like, because you talk about, there's those people who kind of feel like they're in these, they're dating the person who's avoidant and makes them uncomfortable. It's a roller coaster. And then they go to the safe person and they're like, this person's boring. And then they go back to like, how do you feel like you get out of that?
We have to break our pattern. And there's simple ways of doing that, but there's no obviously right way of doing that. You have to do something different than what you normally do. Right. And I'm a big believer in finding people who around you, they could just be friends of yours, who don't have the same wall as you, and just asking them dumb questions that to them will probably sound like the most strange, dumb questions in the world. It's like if you get jealous all the time and you've got a couple of friends who are in an amazing relationship that you really respect and admire and they don't get jealous. And it's like asking them, when they go out or when they're talking to someone attractive or why does that not bother you? Like, and if your instinct is to get jealous, ask those dumb questions.
Right.
Treat yourself like a toddler who is learning to walk in an area where other people are athletes. And by the way, don't shame yourself for that. There's an area where you're an athlete and someone else is a toddler.
Right.
But ask them those dumb questions and you'll start to realize that there's so many moments in life where you go left and they go right. And them going right at that junction will be the reason why they have a very different life than you.
Totally.
And then when you start realizing that, you go, well, what would be like a 1% difference in my action? For that woman I was talking about, it might be like getting on the phone with the guy and she's not going to magically be able to like feel better and just go, this isn't a trigger for me after all, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. But maybe she can just get on the phone and say, I've had a bad day. I'm going to be honest with you.
Right.
And he goes, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Well, I don't know. You didn't invite me to your thing. And I really got in my head over it. And I don't know what to say. I'm embarrassed to even say it, but I got in my head over it. You just, that would be 1% or 5% different to what she would normally do, which is just shut him out.
Right.
Just reject him before he can reject her. And just those few percentage points of difference in behavior can radically change the trajectory of your life. And I think the most important thing about that is what she will get is a slightly different result or maybe a profoundly different, but even if it's just slightly different, a slightly different result is it's like a very profound thing because it's like Inception.
The butterfly effect or something.
You kind of like, it plants this new thing that, oh my God, my world isn't the only world.
Right.
Like that, my way of being isn't the only way to be. And the results I get they're not the only results that are available. And I think when you realize that, it becomes this weird gateway drug to new belief systems.
I love everything you're saying. I think it makes so much sense because you have to think like the way you act in relationships is probably because you were raised someplace that, or the way you act in any way, you were raised in a certain place where that idea was drilled into you. So to surround yourself with something where the immediate thought or the immediate way of doing things is different gives you a whole new perspective on like just the way I think isn't necessary. My thoughts aren't necessarily like true.
Yeah.
I don't have to believe every thought I have.
Yeah. And my reality is not the only reality. And there are other people having a different go of it than me. And I think that's a fascinating idea. I think it opens up the world to you and it makes you realize that's why my past doesn't have to equal my future in this area, is because my past isn't a reflection of what's available to me. It's just a reflection of this world that I've been living in, this world of behaviors that I've been acting in for a very long time.
You talk about the wall in the book.
Yeah, it's in chapter, I want to say 9, Never Satisfied.
And that's how, and you think discovering that wall for you is really like a big part.
I think it's massive. I think it just starts to make it's a very humbling thing. Because I'm not a huge fan of all of the stuff out there, especially in self-development, that just kind of tells you to believe something new. Like you just have to believe this thing instead. I've never been able to do that. That has never worked for me. I've never felt like I get to just go to the buffet of good beliefs in life and just pick the one that's good for me. We are conditioned and wired by everything that's happened in our life. So just telling someone to believe something else makes them feel really, really shitty and inadequate because they feel like I can't do it. But it's why I think curiosity is such a valuable trait to have, because curiosity will just make you go, what could I do slightly differently, or how could I approach this slightly differently that might create a bit of a new result? And I think that is profound, the effects it can have on our life.
Listen, we could go for days and days and hours and hours. This is great. You've been fantastic. Long time coming having you on this show, Matthew Hussey. We want everyone to go buy the book.
I feel like we only just got a nugget. I want more.
Right. Love life, how to raise your standards, find your person, and live happily no matter what. It is in the link to the book is directly in the bio of this episode. Go purchase it. You're going to love it. If you don't already have it, you will love it. You're going to give it to a friend. Maybe this is in the what's it called? The gift basket of their breakup. We always say that with this podcast. Yes. We get given to people in their breakups. Maybe this is part of that gift basket to get well soon. We're going to do some lightning round questions, a few, just before we go. These are from listeners of this show.
All right. What are ways to project confidence dating as a curvy girl when you're not the typical type?
Oh, man. I mean, you have to firstly understand that not everyone is going to want you no matter what you look like. So finding love isn't a popularity contest. It's you're trying to find your person. So you just need one person to think you're incredible. You don't need a whole army of people to think you're great. And really own it. If you start pointing out all these flaws, you're telling someone how to think about you.
You're looking at the wall.
You're looking at the wall and you're telling them to look at it too.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, even then they've written it in their question. You're not the typical type. That could be written. Just writing that out is a limiting factor.
Yeah, because it's like you're telling people to think of you in some lesser way instead of realizing you're going to be absolutely what someone wants. But we have to tell people how to think of us by the way that we talk about our stuff. I'll give you this very quick example. I had 2 women come on my program. Both of them had kids. One of them said, "How do I bring up the fact that I have kids?" The other one told a story of the night before where she used what we'd been talking about to go out there and flirt with someone. And someone in the audience said, "Well, how did you flirt with him?" She said, "Oh God, I don't know." She said he had this chin dimple. And I said, "Your chin dimple's really cute." She said, "It's not quite as cute as my daughter's cheek dimples, but yours is pretty cute." And it was such a fascinating example of how one woman was saying, "How do I bring this up?" And another woman had made it her baggage. Oh, sorry. One woman had made it her baggage, like saying, "How do I bring it up?" And the other woman had literally said it in the first couple of lines when she was flirting.
Part of her charm.
Yeah.
And it's out there.
It's out
now
there.
It's information given.
Well, I think that's a great one. And this, I think, is a question out there you've gotten about people who are like a little bitter or jaded, or it's like, how do I tell someone that I've never been in a relationship, or like, how do I, deal with this intense baggage? And it's like all about the phrasing, right?
Yeah, you've told yourself a story about that's a really, really negative story.
Right.
It's part of your story, but it doesn't have to be a negative part of your story.
Totally agree.
This is a good question. Tips for couples moving in together after dating in a longish distance. So this is your experience.
Did you guys
with
move in
Audrey.
together when she moved there, or did you live separately?
No, we did.
Okay.
Right away.
But I think you have to. I feel like the same about moving in together as I do about starting a business together as a couple. You work together for a few months first, before you sink your money into it and start this whole thing. I think it's the same in moving in together. I don't know, don't go buy a house together. Like go rent an Airbnb together for a few months. Do give yourself some kind of halfway house that's easy to back out of if you need to. Then you can have the experience and see what it's like. You don't know how you're going to be living with someone.
So that's why my husband did he wouldn't do a 2-year lease when we moved in.
Is that right?
He said 1-year lease. We'll see how it goes.
I think that's smart. I think that's really smart.
Not very romantic sounding, but but smart. Yeah.
Is there a 6-month option? So you moved to LA. You guys go right in together, rental.
No, I was living in a house in LA and Audrey moved in, but it was never like...
And you had her sign a lease and be your tenant.
Right. I had her paying all the bills. No, I at any point it was clear like
it was
this
your
would have
house.
been an easy... No, it just would have been an easy thing for Audrey to go back to her home. Like it wouldn't... This was not a difficult thing for her to leave if it didn't work out.
You were like...
We had already spent months living in the same places together when we were.
You weren't like, this is the Harry Potter door under the stairwell. You can stay here.
She would have put me under the stairs.
Right. Okay. Well, listen, Matthew Hussey,
awesome.
This is fantastic. Long time coming. So happy to have you on. Love Life. That's the book. If you're watching on YouTube, it's a beautiful book. How to raise your standards, find your person, live happily. No matter what, it's out. It's out. Go buy it now.
And where can they find you for more?
So the book is at lovelifebook.com. We have a podcast called Love Life with Matthew Hussey. Audrey's on the podcast as well, so you'll hear from Audrey because we do it together, which is really fun. And my website is matthewhussey.com if you want to see live events we're doing. And
is there an audio version
of
the book?
Yeah,
Do you do it?
I do.
Can I keep
You can keep this.
Okay.
You
can
can keep
hear
this.
the-
But yeah, it's on Audible as well.
Yeah.
this? I'll read the actual hardcover. Jared
I'll
will
do
do
the
the
audio.
audio.
So, thank you for
Thank you
coming
so
on.
much.
We solved dating again. We'll be back.
This was awesome.
Wednesday.
Thanks for having me, guys.
The You Up podcast is produced by Candice Maniga and Shannon Sassone. Editing by Jorge Morales-Pico and Shannon Sassone. Social media by Candice Maniga. Be sure to follow at u.up.podcast on Instagram and send us your emails to uup@betches.com.